Welcome back to another episode of Clash of Cultures. Today we're going to be going backwards a little bit and doing another college football preview. Today we're going to be previewing the Oklahoma State Cowboys. But as always, before we get into the football conversation, those of you guys who are new to the channel, please hit the like button. Comment down below what you guys think of our takes, your opinions on any of the dialogue that's going on, any other teams you guys want to see, any other video ideas. And those of you guys who are returning viewers, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for giving us the support. I mean, another 500 subscribers, like I said, since we started this preview series. But nonetheless, we'll get right into the Oklahoma State conversation. But before we do that, there is going to be a trivia again. Those of you guys who were here last video, we started this kind of fun little game before the topic kind of starts. So today I'll go again. I'll give my dad another trivia question. Let me pull up my phone really quick so I can word it correctly.
This is shit. Okay.
So the question is, so this is not an Oklahoma State, I guess, question. Yeah, okay. Question. It doesn't have to do with Oklahoma State. It is obviously a college football question. As you guys can see, my dad's an Ohio State fan, so we're gonna test his kind of memory. I won't say fandom. We'll say his memory.
Okay.
Can you tell me? You got to dig in your bag of tricks here. Can you tell me the last time Ohio State finished the year under 500? What year was that?
It was the year. It was the year that the whole tattoo gate. Hold on, I got to go back in. That was it was the year after Terrell Pryor left. It was when Fickle was the head coach. Luke Fickle was the head coach. They were 6-7. Huh?
Okay, they were 6-7.
Oh, what year was this? This is right before Urban Meyer came. Urban Meyer. We won the championship in I'm going to say 2012.
It was 2011. Ah! But that was actually really good. The fact that you knew the record, you knew all that stuff, that's actually crazy. I didn't think you'd be able to get it that quick. I thought you were going to have to ponder on it.
That was Tattoo Gate. Yeah, we were 6-7. Luke Fickle. We lost a bunch of players.
For the first 5 games, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We couldn't even remember because when Urban first came, we finished 12-0, but we had a 1-year postseason ban, so we couldn't play in the national championship that year.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough of Ohio State talk.
We can talk about it.
No. But we'll get into Oklahoma State. So to kind of get into this video now. Also, wait, before we get into that, did you guys know that? And I know my dad made a joke last video when we did the talking about the 9 champs, and he said, "Don't be a damn lie if you didn't know that."
Was people in that line?
Yeah, no. Well, one guy said he knew, but I don't know if he actually knew. But
he didn't know.
Nonetheless, let's get into talk about Oklahoma State. How do you feel about them, and what do you think their season is going to be looking like this year?
It's going to be a little rough. I'm going to be honest, and we'll get into players and my why here in a minute. They finished 7-6 last year, and as I mentioned, the Big 12 has a bunch of good teams, and I think for some reasons that we're going to highlight, I think Oklahoma State is going to be down. Now, obviously, and what I will mention is, obviously, that starts with Spencer Sanders transferring out. And we'll see what happens with him. I know he's at Ole Miss now. Had an amazing season, or at least what looked like it was going to be an amazing season. If you remember early in Steven's videos, I think you were the first person to kind of highlight him in your Heisman race, if I remember correctly.
That was early when they were 5-0.
Yeah, early. Yeah, and I said that early. But looked like what was going to start to be an amazing season. It started to go downhill, but they lost Spencer Sanders. We'll talk about some of their other losses, but their starting quarterback situation is very rough. They brought in, and we'll talk about Alan Bowman, but they brought in, long story short, somebody's 3rd, 4th string quarterback last year to be their starting quarterback, which is actually kind of shocking to me because you had a bunch of transfer quarterbacks. And I'm surprised none of those quarterbacks we talked about, Tyler, how do you say
Buckner.
His name? Buckner. And we've talked about a bunch of transfer quarterbacks go to situations where they may not be the starter. We talked about Peyton Thorne. I'm surprised a higher profile quarterback didn't go to Oklahoma State. But with that, I think Oklahoma State's going to have a rough year. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this one, and I've probably said this a bunch of times, but this one was really, really hard to do. Just because I feel like they lost a lot, but the Big 12 is wide open still, so I'm not counting them out completely. Obviously, ESPN isn't either. They have them ranked as number 38 coming into the year. Projected win-loss about 7-5, 8-4 ish, with a 2% chance to win the Big 12. So they have the same percent chance to win the Big 12 as UCF and Kansas State, which is a little shocking given that they lost Spencer Sanders and a couple other pieces. They lost their starting running back from last year. He transferred over to, I think, Baylor. I could be wrong. He transferred over to another Big 12 school, I believe. But you brought back, a veteran offensive line. Here, we'll just go into the next slide so you guys can kind of see the roster makeup. But you brought back a veteran offensive line. You brought back your leading receiver in Brandon Presley, starting safety in Kendall Daniels. But I think the trickiest part for me is going to be, we did talk about Alan Bowman a little bit. He transferred from Michigan. He was at Texas. He was at Texas Tech as his freshman year, and he had a really good freshman year as a true freshman. 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. Obviously, he didn't play in Michigan. They have J.J. McCarthy. They had Cade McNamara. So he was behind those guys. But I think, going to Oklahoma State, he's going to fit right back in with the Big 12 style of play, just kind of flinging the ball over the place. He did it as a true freshman at Texas Tech. I would say Texas Tech and Oklahoma State have similar talent when you're talking about the skill positions. So I don't think he's not going to a place that needs to be rebuilt by any means. They have a good head coach. They had a good quarterback play last year. So I think he can kind of fit in. Now, does he replicate what Spencer Sanders does? I don't know about that. But it's kind of the unknown at this point to see if he can do it. You brought over Arlen Bruce from Iowa, Deshaun Stribling from Washington State. We saw him play. My dad and I saw him play last year against Utah. So I think they have some good pieces. But the biggest question mark for me is going to be the defensive side of the ball. You only bring back 2 starters from last year, so that's going to be an issue. And I believe they have a new defensive coordinator as well, who's trying to run a 3-3-5 like Iowa State does. So that one's going to be different now. I just don't know how that pans out. I don't think the offense is as much as a question mark, even though they brought in a new quarterback. I think the defense is going to be a bigger issue for them. But what are your thoughts on their roster makeup?
Yeah, I mean, so they lost some great players. We talked about some of the defensive players, Mason Cobb, Trace Ford, some of the guys that were the heart and soul of that defense last year. I think, and I like some of the people they brought in, but Alan Bowman, I don't think is a high level starting quarterback. But again, we'll see. I think this team just lost too much. I think this is going to be a really bad year. I expect this to be one of the real down teams in the Big 12 this year. They're going to have a tough go of it. They did bring back a number of receivers. I think really 3 of their top 4 receivers. But yeah, it's going to be tough.
So they did bring back some of the receivers, but I don't know. Like I said, they had Spencer Sanders, who was proven to be a good talent. I just don't know how good the receivers are with a quarterback that might not be as good as Spencer Sanders is. So that might be an issue, like I said. And I don't think the offense is going to be the glaring kind of weakness of this team. I think it's going to be the defense. I could be wrong. This coach, he's done it before where he doesn't have high expectations and then he has a great season. Yeah. So we'll just have to see. I don't think they have overwhelming expectations this year. What they're like I said, they're ranked 38 coming into the year, about 7-5, 8-4, which seems about normal in the Big 12. I think a lot of teams have right around that same expectation. I mean, you had Kansas State around that same, you had UCF around the same. So I guess we'll just have to see, but we'll kind of get into the predictions that we both have. So before I kind of explain mine, I want to say that this one was really weird because I felt like realistically the floor could be very low for this team, but I also think the ceiling can be high just because we don't know. It's a lot of unknown. We don't know how UCF is going to play in this conference. We don't know how good West Virginia is going to be. I think the only 2 teams that I can really, when I looked at this schedule and I thought they couldn't beat, it was Kansas State and Oklahoma. Yeah. And that's why I gave them the 10-2 ceiling. But the floor, obviously, you guys see that's a 6-game disparity that I have. So I have them the final prediction for me is 7-5, losing to Iowa State, Kansas State, West Virginia, Oklahoma, and UCF. But I do want to say this. I think with the ceiling being 10-2, I wouldn't be surprised if they were 9-3 or 10-2. And I think the reason why I still have a little bit of hope for this team is because they don't play TCU, Texas, or Baylor, which I think if those 3 those 3 teams were on the schedule, those are another 3 guaranteed losses, in my opinion. I think they would be severe underdogs in all 3 of those games. So the fact that you get to play a team like Houston, a team like Kansas, a team like West Virginia, which I think is a toss-up, UCF. So I think playing those guys instead of the powerhouses of the conference, I think it's going to help. I think they have one of the weakest schedules in the Big 12. And they're at that point where it's not it's divisionless, so the best two teams go. So I think they have a chance they could do it. I don't pencil them in to make it that far. But 7-5, I think, is still a decent season when you lost as much as you lost. And again, like I said, the ceiling is 10-2 for me, so we'll just have to see.
Yeah, this was, like you said, this was a little tough because they could come out and surprise some players, some teams. But what I also said, and again, to your point is, yeah, this schedule, it has a bunch of games that they can win. First, I think they start with 3 games that I think they should be favored in. And what you also kind of hope is maybe they create so much positive momentum in those 3 games that Alan Bowman looks a lot better. And some of these players start to gel. That defense starts to come together. And by the time they get into the real middle of their schedule, the part that I guess, well, if you look where I have them losing, 6 games in a row, maybe by that point they've gelled a little bit. They understand, they're starting to come into their own. And because every game that I have them losing, I wouldn't be shocked if they won. I don't think there's any game on this schedule that I'd be shocked. And I guess if I did that, I would say my true ceiling would be 12-0, because I wouldn't be shocked if they won any of these games. I just think when I look at this roster, what they're bringing back and who they're up against, I think some of these games they're going to lose. I don't think this is a good team, but like you said, Oklahoma State has seemed to find their way in the thick of things season after season after season. It's really kind of a Mike Gundy, Coach Gundy trademark that he seems to keep them relevant somehow.